where did they come from?
Yes.
They came from the east end of Toronto in '76. I put an ad in the paper that I was looking for musicians, and I ended up choosing the first 3 guys that answered my ad, and that was Freddie Pompey, Chris Haight, and Motor X. And then we practiced a few times, had a gig within like 2 months of forming, but that's where we formed, in the east end of Toronto. The very first Viletones gig was at a club in Toronto called the Colonial Underground. It's been told to me that there was a lineup down the street. I wouldn't have noticed because I was in the venue. I was in the dressing room. Because we had never played anywhere, I was surprised that it was jam-packed. I mean, jam-packed. And I mean, right from the get-go, right from the first chord, they just went nuts, the audience. And that was our first gig. And when I woke up the next day, in the Globe and Mail newspaper, they had the entire page, a photo of me with the caption, "Ugly Music," and a big, sort of middle spread of what this writer thought of the show. And it was spectacular. And that was the first show. And upstairs, at the same time that we were playing, was Ronnie Hawkins. Ronnie Hawkins. And he was like the man of, Toronto. And everybody knew about Ronnie Hawkins. He decided that it was the sound from us downstairs was going up to the part of the venue where he was. And he sent like a goon squad down to try to shut it down, try to shut up people and shut it down. But it didn't work out that way. All it did was cause this big fight. And the guys that he sent from upstairs must have been the bouncers, because they were like these huge guys, 240 pounds, 6'2". But the punks that were there fought them off. And that too was in the papers. So the whole gig became mythic. It became like a spectacle through the media. So the people that even, that weren't even there, they got wind of it, and the myth, this thing of Viletones, became a word onto its own. It became more than just a name of a band. Like you could say to somebody, "You're a Viletone," and people would get what that meant. And we attracted and wanted all the disenfranchised kids the most to love us. And that was all the East Side kids, that were from Blake Street in particular. And I loved the Blake Street boys. And, gigs thereafter seemed to always involve the Blake Street boys getting into a fight with other people in the audience, mostly the art crowd, the kids from OCA, the privileged kids, the kids that had everything that the Blake Street kids didn't. So we were tied in. It was totally synonymous. And after that, the band just seemed to go from strength to strength. But it was all based on that first gig, that it went so well, and it was packed, and we sounded good. And it was new. It was a kind of music that people hadn't heard before. And it was through Jack Kerouac, On the Road, his first book, that he referenced which I read, of course, when I was a kid, and he referenced Rimbaud and Baudelaire. So I went out and I got those two writers, Rimbaud's A Season in Hell and Baudelaire's Paris Spleen. And I'd say that when I was 17, reading A Season in Hell by Rimbaud completely changed my life, but not for the best. It gave me a look into a dark side that Rimbaud could paint, and Rimbaud could write about. And I started myself seeing the world through his lens, through his eyes. I didn't see it the way it was. I saw it for the way people are all hypocritical. And I saw it as a disguise of the truth. And Baudelaire was not very much different, really. He was a more flowery writer, easier to read than Rimbaud. However, he talked also about that. Both writers, French, they talked about people a lot, people. And not pastoral, not at all like the English writers of the time, nothing pastoral. It was about the human experience and the ugliness of humans. And of the two, Rimbaud hit me very hard. The first time I went down to New York, went to the Bowery, saw CBGB's, and I just walked in. I walked in, and as it turned out, Big Hilly Crystal, he was a huge man, he was a big man, size of a biker, size of a Hell's Angel. He was there, and I went up to him and I said to him, "Can I get a gig here? Can I play here?" And I brought with me a couple of, write-ups from our shows. I don't even think our first record had come out yet. And Hilly, he said, "Yeah, you can have a gig." And he said, "I'm going to book you into July 4th. And I knew instinctively that was a big, big deal because July 4th in the States. So he gave me 3 nights to play CBGB's. And he was a very quiet man. But what he said was, it was like that was Steel Trap. That was, he didn't have to ask, his daughter who filled in the booking paper and the dates and everything. He said, "You're going to play July 4th, and I've got a couple of other nights for you." So that was great. And I loved the guy. I had other dealings with him, but that first one, that was the best one. Big Old Hilly Crystal. First gig in New York, the first night, that went spectacular, similarly to the first gig in Toronto. And partly that was due to Lester Bangs, a big pop critic and culture writer at the time. He said he deemed us the best punk band in the world. That's there. It's in the Village Voice. And it doesn't matter if he was kidding or not. It just doesn't matter. He said Viletones are the best punk band in the world. He also said other things about Viletones. His reference to us being like the Philadelphia Flyers at that time, who were total goons. But Lester Bangs really got what we were doing. I thought that the New York crowd were really trying to get their land legs on punk. And the audience was a lot older than the audience in Toronto by a few years. So it wasn't like we were playing to a teenage crowd. It was like we were playing to a crowd in their 20s who had been exposed to bands like Television, Talking Heads, sort of bands or Patti Smith, bands that you had to really think about, not feel. And we were a feeling band.
the corner of my eye where the glass cut through. Oh, from the corner of my eye where the blood did fall. Tears Elvis won't come no more. Well, yeah, I'm sorry, it won't come for you. I don't feel sorry for the things that I do. You get hurt, well, that's too bad. If it's
All right. Well, August 16th, 1977 was kind of like any other day. And that night of August 16th, I was the DJ playing records at Club David's. And so everybody, you know, my friends knew how much I loved Elvis Presley. And Gary Cormier came over and sort of tapped me on the shoulder. This is like way before, you know, the internet and everything. Anyway, he tapped me on the shoulder and told me that Elvis Presley died. I was seriously in shock. I mean, it really, really hit me. And I became very silent. And I just had a couple of Elvis Presley 45s. So I kept playing, I think it was Heartbreak Hotel. Pretty sure it was Heartbreak Hotel. And I kept playing that 45 over and over again. And I was in a trance in the DJ booth, just staring out. I didn't have anybody there that I could talk to.
I'll never feel sad.